All right. So have you ever, like, I don't know, really craved a bag of chips? Even when, like you're really trying to eat healthy.
Yeah.
Or like you can't stop scrolling through, like social media.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know, you feel like almost addicted to it.
Yeah.
It's almost like birds flying into windows.
Okay.
What if all these things were like connected to something called evolutionary mismatch?
Evolutionary mismatch. It's this really interesting concept that suggests that our instincts that helped us survive way back when, over thousands of years,
Right.
can actually backfire in like today's world.
So it's like we're running like outdated software in a brand new operating system.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. So like our genes, they evolve slowly over generations, right?
Right.
But the environment, especially with technology, is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And it creates this gap where our instincts that were once so essential for us to survive, now they kind of lead us into traps.
So it's not like our instincts are bad.
No, not at all.
They just haven't caught up
to
the modern world.
They haven't caught up to the modern world.
Could you give us like an example
Sure.
of this mismatch in action?
Think about sugar. So for most of human history, finding sugar was like a really rare thing.
Right.
And it was valuable. And our ancestors evolved to crave it because it gave them this quick boost of energy, which was essential for like hunting or escaping danger. But now we are like surrounded by it.
Right.
Everywhere.
Our bodies still think like finding a Snickers bar is like winning the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Our brains are wired to like seek out this rare energy-dense food, which leads to overconsumption. And then unfortunately, all those health issues we see today, it's like our internal programming is still stuck on find sugar, survive, even though it's not serving us well anymore.
Yeah. It's like our brains are playing a game, but they're using rules from like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier, like those animal examples.
Yes.
How does this like evolutionary mismatch play out in the animal kingdom?
So one of the most striking examples is sea turtles. So for millions of years, baby sea turtles, they've relied on the moonlight reflecting off the ocean to guide them back to the water.
Oh, wow.
After they hatch on the beach.
Okay.
It's an instinct. It's finely tuned, and it ensures their survival.
So it's like the moonlight acts like their compass.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pointing them in the right direction.
But now, with all this development along the coastlines, there's so much artificial light, and it's created a huge problem for these turtles because they instinctively follow the brightest light source, which used to be the moon reflecting off the ocean.
Right.
But now it's street lights and buildings.
So instead of going, to the safety of the ocean, they're going inland. To danger.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, man.
Unfortunately, it is. That's so sad. Yeah, hundreds of thousands of hatchlings die every year.
Oh, wow.
Because of this, their once life-saving instinct is actually now leading them into, we call it an evolutionary trap.
Oh, wow. So their strength is now their weakness, kind of.
Exactly, yeah. And, this problem with artificial light, it's not just limited to sea turtles. It affects lots of different species. And it even has implications for us humans.
Wait, really? How does light pollution affect us?
Well, our bodies, we've evolved to follow a natural sleep-wake cycle. That's regulated by light and darkness. So like melatonin, the hormone that helps us sleep, it's produced in response to darkness. But now we have all this exposure to artificial light, especially at night. And it can disrupt this delicate balance.
So even though we're not, baby turtles trying to find the ocean. Our bodies are still reacting to that light. In a way that's maybe not beneficial for us.
Exactly, yeah. That's just one example of how our modern environment can create these mismatches. Think about like our constant access to information, stimulation. Our brains evolved in a world where mental downtime was like the norm. But now we're constantly bombarded with news, with social media, entertainment. It's like our brains are on overdrive all the time, and there's no time to really rest and process. So could this be another example of evolutionary mismatch?
Oh, I like that. It fits the pattern for sure. And this constant stimulation, does that have like a real impact on our mental well-being?
It does, for sure. So think about this. Our ancestors evolved to be like very in tune to social cues. because belonging to a group was essential for their survival. And now social media taps into that instinct.
Right.
And it provides this constant stream of social information and feedback. But is it really satisfying?
Right.
That ancient need for connection?
It's such a good question. It's like, on the surface, we're more connected than ever. But yeah, like you said, loneliness, anxiety are on the rise.
Right.
Maybe it's because the way we're connecting isn't how our brains are wired.
Yeah. Yeah, and that brings us to the heart of the issue. How do we navigate a world where our ancient programming can sometimes lead us astray? How do we recognize these evolutionary traps and even potentially overcome them?
It's like this big puzzle, but the stakes are really high.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin to tackle this?
Well, first we have to understand exactly how these evolutionary mismatches, manifest in our lives.
Yeah.
Let's dive into some more specific examples.
Okay. Yeah.
Both in the animal kingdom and in our own human experience. Maybe by understanding the problem, we can start to see some solutions.
Okay, yeah. I like that. So let's do that. Let's dive in a little deeper.
Let's do it.
So we know that our brains, it's like they're walking around with Stone Age operating systems trying to figure out this space age world, which leads to like some glitches.
Right.
But where do we see these like really obvious impacts of this evolutionary mismatch?
Well, we've already talked about a few, like the overabundance of sugar in our diets.
Right.
The disruption of our sleep cycles from artificial light.
Right.
And then the potentially addictive nature of social media.
Right, yeah.
So let's go a little deeper into how these, mismatches actually play out in our day-to-day lives. So let's go back to social media.
Yeah, I was actually really curious about that one. It feels like we've traded like a genuine connection for this constant stream of, I don't know, superficial interactions.
And that's exactly where the mismatch lies. Our brains are wired to crave connection. But the way we're getting it through social media doesn't really fully satisfy that ancient need.
Right.
And it can sometimes make us feel even more isolated.
It's funny. I was reading an article the other day about how some social media platforms are actually designed to keep us hooked. Using things like, notifications, infinite scroll.
That's right.
Just, keep us on there.
These features exploit our innate desire for novelty and reward, and essentially they're hijacking our brain's dopamine system.
It's like they figured out the cheat codes to our evolutionary programming.
In a way, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that's why it's so difficult to resist the pull of social media. Even when we know it's not really serving us, our brains are constantly getting bombarded with these little bursts of dopamine. So
it's not just a lack of willpower. It's like we're fighting against our own biology.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And this is just one example of how these mismatches can lead to behaviors that might seem irrational on the surface. But they actually make sense from an evolutionary perspective.
I'm starting to see, like, just how big this issue really is.
Yeah.
It's not just about, like, bad habits. It's about understanding the deeper forces at play here.
That's the key, yeah. Once we recognize these patterns, we can actually start to develop some strategies to navigate them more effectively.
So what are some of those strategies? Like, how do we start to bridge this gap between, like, our ancient instincts and the demands of the modern world?
Well, one approach is to think about how we can actually modify our environments to better align with our evolutionary needs. We already touched on a few examples, like reducing our exposure to artificial light at night.
Right.
Or being mindful of how much sugar we're eating. But there's actually a lot of other ways that we can kind of hack our environments for the better.
Okay, give us some examples. I'm all ears.
All right, well, think about exercise.
Okay.
Our bodies evolved to be active, but many of us live these like incredibly sedentary lives.
Yeah.
We spend hours sitting at desks, staring at screens, and our bodies really pay the price.
It's no wonder we're seeing like an increase in these chronic diseases that are related to just not moving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can make conscious choices to incorporate more movement into our day. Like take the stairs instead of the elevator, walk or bike instead of driving, or even just, stand up and stretch every hour. It doesn't have to be like a marathon. Just these small changes that can really add up over time.
So it's about like making movement like a natural part of our lives.
Yeah.
Rather than something we have to like force ourselves to
do. Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
And you can apply this same principle to other areas of your life as well.
Right.
For example, we can create environments that encourage more face-to-face social interaction rather than just relying on, digital communication all the time.
Right.
We can prioritize activities that actually bring us genuine joy and connection.
Right.
Rather than just chasing those fleeting dopamine hits.
It's like we're retraining our brains,
Mm-hmm.
teaching them to find pleasure and fulfillment in ways that are more aligned with like our long-term well-being.
Exactly, yeah. And that's really powerful. It means we're not just at the mercy of our genes.
Yeah.
We have the ability to adapt, to learn, and to make choices that actually support our health and happiness.
Yeah.
Even if our instincts sometimes kind of push us in a different direction.
This is really starting to click for me. But I gotta admit, it's kind of overwhelming to think about changing like so many things at once.
Right.
Where do we even begin? Well, it's important to start small.
Okay.
And just focus on one area at a time.
Right.
So for example, if you're really struggling with like social media overuse, maybe you could start by just setting some limits on your screen time.
Okay.
Or turning off those notifications.
Or even replacing like some of that screen time with more face-to-face interactions, like instead of texting, maybe like actually call a friend.
Exactly. Yeah. Or instead of, scrolling through Instagram for an hour, maybe you join a hiking group.
Okay.
Or you take a cooking class. The key is to find activities that actually nourish you.
Right.
And bring you that sense of connection and fulfillment.
Okay, so we're not talking about like a complete overhaul of our lives.
No, not at all.
It's more about making like small, sustainable changes that kind of like gradually shift us in a healthier direction.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware of these evolutionary mismatches. Right.
And making conscious choices that support our well-being.
I love that perspective. It's not about beating ourselves up for our bad habits.
Right.
It's about understanding, why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And then finding ways to work with our biology, not against it.
Exactly. We're all works in progress. And the more we understand about how our brains are wired, the better equipped we are to create a life that's truly fulfilling and aligned with our values.
This has been like incredibly insightful. It's given me a whole new way of thinking about, my own behaviors and the choices I make every day.
I'm so glad to hear that. And it brings us to this really fascinating question.
Okay.
If we can understand these mismatches, can we actually retrain our ancient instincts to thrive in the modern world?
That's a big one.
It is, yeah.
But I'm definitely intrigued. Yeah. Is it even possible?
But that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive.
We're going to delve into the incredible plasticity of the human brain and discover just how adaptable we truly are.
Okay, so we've talked about how, our Stone Age brains can sometimes clash with our modern lives.
Right.
But I'm really curious about this idea of rewiring our instincts.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
Well, it's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And the answer is more hopeful than you might think.
Okay.
The human brain has remarkable plasticity.
Okay.
Meaning that it can actually change and adapt throughout our lives.
So it's not like we're stuck with this fixed set of instincts forever.
No, not at all. Every time we learn something new, form a new habit, experience something novel, our brains are actually rewiring themselves.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
It is.
But when we're talking about these deep-seated evolutionary drives, our cravings for sugar, our need for social connection, can we really rewire those?
It might not be as simple as flipping a switch, but we can definitely influence these drives through conscious effort and practice. Think about mindfulness. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations in our bodies, we can actually start to observe these instinctive urges without immediately acting on them.
So instead of being controlled by, our cravings, we can create a little space between the urge and the action.
Exactly, yeah. That space gives us an opportunity to make a conscious choice.
Okay.
We can ask ourselves, is this behavior really serving me right now? Or am I just reacting to an outdated instinct?
I'm starting to see how this could apply to so many things.
Yeah.
Like, instead of like mindlessly reaching for my phone when I'm bored, I can pause and think, what do I really need in this moment? Maybe it's not another dopamine hit from social media. Maybe it's like, a walk in nature or a conversation with, someone I care about.
That's a great example. And the more we practice this kind of mindful awareness, the easier it becomes to break free from those automatic instinct-driven behaviors.
Okay.
And our brains start to form new pathways, new habits that are more aligned with our values and our goals.
So it's not about erasing our instincts.
Right.
It's more about like learning to manage them.
Exactly.
To channel them in a way that benefits us.
Precisely. It's about becoming the conscious architects of our own evolution, so to speak.
I love that.
Yeah.
It feels so empowering.
It is.
Like, we're not just victims of our biology. We have the ability to, shape our own destinies.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole conversation so exciting. It opens up a world of possibilities for personal growth and transformation.
This has been such an eye-opening journey. It feels like I've gained a whole new understanding of myself and the forces that shape my behavior.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, this journey of self-discovery and adaptation, it's ongoing.
Right.
There's always more to learn about ourselves and the world around us. Right.
The key is to stay curious, to keep exploring, to keep pushing the boundaries of our own potential.
I love that. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into evolutionary mismatch. And I really hope this conversation has, sparked some new insights for you all listening and inspired you to, think a little differently about your own behaviors and choices. Remember, we're all in this together.
We are.
Navigating this crazy, complex, modern world with our ancient brains, but with awareness, compassion, and a little bit of effort. We can learn to thrive, to adapt, and to create a future that's truly aligned with our deepest values and aspirations. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring.